I'm Barbara Rumkunis, and this is your Exeter History Minute. Today, let's talk about the arts. Exeter's not a very large place, but we do seem to have a healthy number of published authors. I mean, maybe all New England towns do, but our radar is set to Exeter. Now, we don't have enough time to talk about all writers of all mediums, so I'm going to talk about our best-known authors of fiction. Exeter's earliest novelist is most likely Tabitha Tenney. We made an entire history minute about Tenney in her book, Female Quixotism. The book is a great read that stood up well over time. If you want more information about Tabitha Gilman Tenney, go back and watch the video. Henry Shute was born in Exeter in 1856. He went to the town schools and prepped for college at Phillips Exeter Academy. His 4 years at Harvard were the only years of his life spent away from Exeter, and he really had no desire to explore the world. As an adult, he worked as a lawyer and local judge. In 1908, he began publishing the first of his books, The Real Diary of a Real Boy, written as though it was an actual diary, misspellings and all, takes you through a mid-19th century boyhood full of all kinds of shenanigans that kids got up to back then. Olive Tardif, who later wrote about Henry Shute, and maybe at some point we'll do a video on our many history writers. Anyway, Olive said that Shute was probably retelling stories he'd heard from his father, George Shute, who must have been quite a cut-up in his own time. The book, and then the 18 books that followed, were instantly successful. They're often laugh-out-loud funny, but they can be hard to find. You'll have to look in antique bookshops to find them. A word of warning, however, the language and humor in these books come from another time. If you're thinking of reading them aloud, pre-read them first to decide whether or not you want to go there. Albertus T. Dudley was a Latin instructor at Phillips Exeter Academy in the early part of the 20th century. He also served as the gymnasium director, which gave him the personal experience to write his series of 8 books for boys, mostly taking place in sports teams at boys' boarding schools. You'll need to find an antiques bookshop for these books, like the Henry Shute series. We're going to count John Knowles as an Exeter author, even though he wasn't originally from Exeter. Knowles was born in West Virginia in 1926. He attended Phillips Exeter Academy, graduating in 1945. His novel, A Separate Peace, is set in the fictional Devon Academy, which is modeled on Phillips Exeter. It's a coming-of-age story that's still taught in schools today. In 1972, a film version of the book was shot in and around Exeter, starring Parker Stevenson. There's a pivotal scene where young Phineas injures his leg jumping from a tree into the Devon River. As far as we know, the tree that is locally acknowledged to be the tree in the book on the Exeter River is still standing. John Irving, the author of World According to Garp, Hotel New Hampshire, The Cider House Rules, A Prayer to Owen Meany, and many others, was born in Exeter. He draws a lot of the action in his stories from his childhood here. In fact, my introduction to Exeter's history was A Prayer for Owen Meany. Although he changes the names of places, like the Ioka Theater is called the Idaho, you can have a lot of fun in Exeter by looking for the sites that he talks about. Irving won the Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar in 1999 for Cider House Rules. Thank you, John Irving. And of course, Dan Brown, author of The Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, and Inferno, is also from Exeter. Dan Brown doesn't set his novels in Exeter, but he does sometimes embed the names of actual Exeter people in his work. Longtime Exeter librarian and now trustee of the Exeter Historical Society, Pam Jedham, was featured as the research librarian at King's College, Oxford University in The Da Vinci Code. So she got invited to the New Hampshire premiere of the film when it came out, only to discover that in the film, her big scene was replaced with a cell phone call. That burns. There's also Joe Hill, who writes fantasy, like the New York Times bestseller The Fireman. He also does short stories and comics. His novel Horns was made into a film released in 2014. Brendan Du Bois writes from his office in Exeter. He's the author of the popular Lewis Cole mystery series. If you're going to keep up with all the Exeter novelists, you've got some reading to do. This episode of the Exeter History Minute has been sponsored by Jim Mill Remax Shoreline Real Estate. And to rectify a great wrong, in the Da Vinci Code, Robert Langdon, professor of symbology, arrives at the King's College Religion Department and meets Pam Jedham, reference librarian, to get some information. He drops the name of Lee Teabing. Does she know of him? Here's the real Pam Jedham playing the part.
Heavens, yes, what a character. Fanatical. Every time he comes in, it's always the same search string. Grail, Grail, Grail! I swear that man will die before he gives up on that quest. Time and money afford one such lovely luxuries, wouldn't you say?